Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. This time let's take a look at the best board games about World War I. In my opinion, it is a bit unfairly forgotten topic which sits in the shadow of the World War II games. Nevertheless, World War I games are not less charming and cool, and to make this episode even more interesting, let's try to cover all different aspects of this war: land, sea, aerial combat, political aspects, beginning of the conflict, end of the war, and at different scales and levels of this conflict. Okay, let's jump to it. It's very exciting topic. Clash of Giants 2, first Ypres and Galicia in 1914, one of the oldest games in this list. The game is released in 2006 by GMT Games. Nevertheless, game covers two of the probably the most interesting campaigns of the First World War, which is Galicia and Ypres. Game box contains two separate games for both of these campaigns. Game emphasizes the difficulties of a commanding group of the armies, with system where movement allowance for each army is separately determined by the command role, and elaborate game mechanics leads to many difficult decisions to make. Axis and Allies, World War I, 1914. Axis and Allies is a well-known title among war games, and in this edition developers adjusted combat rules to simulate trench warfare. In this game, players must lead one of the fighting forces in the battle. Each power has its unique infantry figurines in this game. There are a lot of weaponry and vehicles miniatures such as artillery, tanks, planes and navy vessels. The game is intense and can take a couple of hours to play. Grizzled. It is a simple cooperative card game where players follow a group of the soldiers in the trenches with a simple goal: to survive. Specific game where instead of gaining traits or upgrading something, you draw cards that represent either threats or negative personal traits. Well, you draw cards and then try to play them, and if one trait shows up too many times, then team fails the mission. So the team must play their traits correctly in order to gain any progress. Specific game that in my opinion is cool and deserves gamers' attention. So let's carry on with To the Last Man, The Great War in the West. Card-driven turn-based strategy campaign game that involves all aspects of the war, including main technological, military and political events. Players must not only pay attention to combat strategies, but on wise resource management, which if depleted will limit military capabilities. Combat system is based on the rolling a dice, and game has numerous scenarios to play out. 1914, Glory's End, When Eagles Fight. A great game that covers the first 3 months of the war on the West Front. Game is quite comprehensive and includes all important characteristics of the time: trenches, forts, cavalry, command and control breakdowns, strategic railway movement, allied sea movement, German movement, and many more aspects. The game is flexible, so the game campaign can be played in historical or free setup versions. Overall, very nice game. If you love political games, then you will love the next one. Versailles, 1919. This game allows you to experience this part of history as one of 4 leaders sitting in conference room and gaining influence, while at the same time you face challenges that you must overcome to gain the most for your national interests. Game has a card bidding mechanics in which you use your influence to settle issues aligned with your agenda, while keeping domestic components in support for your actions in the conference. Well, It is a game about political balance and diplomacy. Very interesting political game that you can play either solo or up to 4 players. The lamps are going out. World War I. Game simulates World War I at a high strategic level. In this game, many of economic and military factors have been simplified, while still accurately portraying the balance of the forces, strategies, constraints, and ultimately the grand decision-making involved. All war theaters are represented, from Europe to the Middle East and Africa, as well as a naval war in the Atlantic. Main focus of the game is the conducting of movement and offensives of field armies in attempt to deplete, break through, and force retreats of enemy armies to gain either territory or eliminate opposing forces. Next one is quite unique in our list as well, the Great War. This game mainly focuses on trench warfare and immerses players in the epic battles of World War I. Quite flexible and diverse game where scale of the scenario varies from small unit tactics to large battles. It is very cool game where on the one hand the card-driven system creates a great feeling of fog of war, and on the other hand the dice-driven combat system resolves combat very quickly, so that adds a great gameplay and dynamic to this game. One of my favorites in this list. 1914. Offensive Ypres. Sorry if I cannot pronounce this name right in the French. A game covers battles through the Belgium, France and Germany during the first month of World War I. Campaign scenarios covers the period from August 16, 1914 to the mid-November of that year. The game has a very detailed map and it is a historically very accurate game. But this game is quite complex and can take quite a long time to play. Red Poppies campaign, The Battle of Ypres. Great battalion and regiment level strategy game with a stunning attention to the map detail. Players must maneuver infantry companies and manage artillery. It is a dice-driven game. I love dice-driven games. In my opinion, they are much more flexible and of a much bigger diversity and unpredictability. Well, it's just my personal opinion. Anyway, it is a cool and dynamic game where you can combine separate scenarios into campaigns, and there is a lot of fighting in this game. Fields of Despair, France, 1914-1918. Strategy game for 1 or 2 players where you must not only fight but also make economic and technological decisions. Game has a great block fog of war system. I love that system. Well, it is not something unique. There are other games that uses that system, but in my opinion, block system is one of the coolest fog of war systems for board games. Anyway, I love blocks. What about you? Do you like block system as well? Share your opinion in comments. Yeah, this game's block combat system values ranges from 0 to 20. So that means that under, or more precisely behind one block, you can hide either tiny or massive and powerful force that gives you high freedom and ability for deception. So in my opinion, it is very cool and quite distinctive feature of this game. Pursuit of Glory, a great dynamic card-driven strategy game covering the First World War with focus on Great War in the Middle East, Balkans, Black Sea area, Suez Canal, well, basically all that dynamic part of a World War I. Well, in comparison to the more or less static Western Front. Yeah. A campaign-based card-driven game for 2 players only. Well, that is sad that there is no solitaire option, but overall game is great. Next game is unique in this list because it is about airplanes. Wings of Glory, World War I. Game recreates aerial combat during World War I, where cards and miniatures represent airplanes and their movements. In Wings of Glory, players will control one or more airplanes, engaging opponents in aerial duels or trying to accomplish specific missions, like for example reconnaissance. Very nice game. 1914, Twilight in the East. Game represents the battles that took place in Prussia, Poland and Galicia during the first year of World War I. Game has great historical accuracy and realism packed in 5 beautiful scenarios. Very complex and interesting game about the military maneuvers and combat. Game system is very detailed. This must be a very exciting game for those who are looking for extra complexity. Fatal Alliances, The Great War, 1914-1918. It is a World War I version of World in Flames. Game is very comprehensive and includes many aspects of the war. In order to succeed, you must coordinate artillery, air force, gas units, shock troops, engineer units, infantry, cavalry, and even elite tanks. And as a game includes all war theaters, then you will be able to experience not only static trench warfare on the Western Front, but dynamic warfare in Balkans, Middle East and Eastern Europe. Very great game. Europe in Turmoil, Prelude of the Great War. It is a very nice card game in which 2 players each assume the role of the political ideology ascendant in Europe at the time. Yes, this game allows only 2-player gameplay. Very distinctive game in our list. One player which plays as a liberal with a pacifist and socialist principles dominating in United Kingdom and French Republic, while the opponent plays as authoritarian dominating in Russia, Germany and Austria-Hungary, representing their reactionary and repressive regimes. Well, the game includes all the hustle of the time, like revolutions, repressions, arms race, alliances and all kinds of other political issues on different scale. Very interesting game where map represents the political reality of the time. Riders of the Deep, U-Boats of the Great War, 1914-18. It is a solitary tactical level game placing you in command of German U-boat during World War I. Yes, it is about the inception of submarine warfare. Your mission is to destroy as much Allied shipping as possible while advancing your crew quality, increasing your commander's rank, and attempt to survive until the end of the war. Very cool game. By the way, there are other episodes on the channel about the submarine warfare, so you are very welcome to check them out, but now let's carry on with Verdun, 1916, Steel Inferno. Verdun 1916 Steel Inferno is a card-driven war game about a year-long fighting around Verdun. The game is based on monthly turns and allows for tense action-driven contest, which includes all the events of the 1916, including the famous Somme offensive, where more than 3 million soldiers took part in this fighting. It was also one of the bloodiest battles of the war, where around 1 million were killed or wounded, and it was the same offensive where first time in the world's history tanks were used. Well, the game depicts a very iconic episode of the war and history, and even this fact alone gives this game very high ranking. Great War Commander. Great War Commander is a battalion-size wargame based on the popular Combat Commander series, where 2 players take turns playing fate cards in order to activate military units on the map board that represents Western Front across Belgium and North France. Game is very dynamic. For example, artillery barrages can alter terrain, gas attacks can flood a sector, as superiority or reconnaissance can influence the fighting on the ground. A very dynamic game. Very interesting, with more than 30 actions including engineering work, go to ground, a rolling barrage of powerful artillery and many more things. It is really cool game. Path of Glory. It is a war game classic. It is a massive strategic level game that has everything what war gamers are looking for. Best overall in this list. It was released in 1999, but after more than 20 years it still stands out and competes with its rivals, and it is still available on Amazon. Yes, some of these games are available on Amazon. I left links in the description. Anyway, Path of Glory is a very highly rated and ranked game. This game is just brilliant. Players can recreate all the famous battles of the World War I and experience hard work and decision making of rulers and generals of the time. Write in the comments which game you liked most. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If so, then give it a like and do not forget to subscribe. Thank you for watching, following and interacting. Have a wonderful day, success in the gaming, and stay tuned for the next episode.